Okay, on my next segment now, we have my next special guest all queued up, and I'd like to warmly welcome on the show Dr. Jack Lewis, neuroscientist, television personality, and author. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
That's great. It's good to have you on board. We'll be discussing how our house has been turned into everything but our home, and you may be giving some tips and advice on how best to address this for our listeners.
Yeah, that's right. So this Belvita survey looking into how our homes have become multi-purpose, their offices, their gyms, they were until very recently schools. It's revealed some quite interesting things. So firstly, 59% of people have been forced to set up a home office at some point over the lockdown. 42% find that home doesn't really feel like home anymore. And the one that alarms me the most as a neuroscientist is a quarter of us feel obliged to always be on. And that says to me that people are struggling to manage their stress levels.
Yeah. Thanks for filling those kind of details in. So the key question: has our home become the ultimate workplace? Kind of a school as well for home teaching.
Yeah, it's really blurred the boundaries between work and home life. So, back in the days of the commute, you could physically leave your home, go somewhere else, do all of the stresses related to work in a physically different location. And then even on the commute back, like no one loves commuting, but at least you're getting physical distance from where all those stresses are. And whilst, of course, there are stresses relating to the home, they're very different, right? And they tend not to be so intense. So now that we've been robbed of that because of lockdown, it's more important than ever to find other ways to make sure that when it comes time to unwind and de-stress, that you can actually do it more effectively. And so that's why I'm delighted that Belvita have kind of gone on this mission to help us reclaim our spaces.
Yeah. I was going to ask, a quarter of Brits say they're struggling to keep their home space from their workplace.
Yeah, that's right. And so it just means that we need to create a recharge retreat, a little corner of our home that we can go to more efficiently de-stress. The reason being that a little bit of stress every day is good for us. It helps us get stuff done. But we all know that chronic stress is bad because when you get the stress hormone cortisol released into your bloodstream, what it does is it travels around every cell in our body, causing it to release extra energy, helping us to focus our attention on the problem at hand and making us feel a bit stressed out so that we have the motivation to deal with the cause of that stress.
Yeah.
And then once the cause of stress has gone away, our cortisol levels come back down to normal levels, and then we can go back to feeling relaxed and not wound up. The trouble is, if you're chronically stressed and you've got loads of cortisol swimming around your system, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, it really kind of, it eats away at you physically, mentally. It wears you down. So it's a really important business to effectively relax when you get the chance to.
Yeah. There's a word for that. Kind of de-stressing. I know there's quite a few words, terminologies to do that. And how do you separate an office from your bedroom or living room? Is it best to keep them separate? When you finish, turn all the lights off, turn everything off, and just shut the door on your kind of setup where you work.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. That's the sort of starting point, to make sure that all of the visible signs of the daily stresses are actually cleared away out of sight, or at the very least, chuck a rug over it, chuck a throw over it.
Yeah.
And the reason it's important is because part of the brain that works out where you are in space, where you are, what location you're in, and what kind of things happen in that location. It's called the hippocampus. And so the hippocampus is the part of our brain we use to create memories and to know how to get from A to B. And the reason it's so important in this discussion is that some places are associated by our brain with stress, and some places are associated by our brain with relaxation and leisure pursuits. But when both sets of activities are happening in the same physical location, we can get confused. You might say to yourself, okay, day's work's over. But when you don't physically move anywhere else, it can be hard for your brain to actually get the message that it's okay to stop doing things and actually decompress. So the idea of this Belvita recharge retreat is that, on one hand, if you go to YouTube and search Belvita UK, George Clark invented a really beautiful kind of optimal recharge retreat using all of the principles and his knowledge of architecture. And then there's another film with me in it explaining how you can just create on a shoestring budget, just using the five senses to create a unique multi-sensory fingerprint. So you just make that little corner of your home look a certain way. You put a sound on in the background, maybe running water. You put a certain scent, the smell in the air. For me, I use mandarin essential oils, so I get a citrusy smell in the air. You use the sense of touch, the sense of taste, and you get these five sensory experiences which all happen simultaneously with going to a corner of your home where you leave all of the technology and clutter behind, and you just center yourself, you relax, you calm yourself down. And as the days go by, you do this on a regular basis, your brain learns that it might not be a completely different location, but it's a subset of the location. It's a little corner of your home where when you're in there and you've got the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it always consistently feels to the sense of touch, the smell, taste, you're always there relaxing. So just by getting up and going to that corner of your home, already you will start after just a few days to feel more relaxed. And then you're bringing your cortisol levels down to baseline levels, which means you'll be better prepared to go back into the grind when you get up and end your break.
Some priceless advice there. And I know you're saying about how the mind can be overwhelmed with too much information, too much to do. I kind of compare it to like a CPU on a laptop, you know, when you've got too many applications open and it's kind of going into overload.
That's a really good analogy. I like that. I usually think of car engine where you're flooring the accelerator pedal, but you've got no clutch control. But I think, yeah, you're right. CPU, if you've got too many apps going, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad way of thinking about. You need to give your brain a break from all of that by switching off completely and then rebooting from scratch. You know, that's the classic solution to all technology problems. You need to do the same thing with your brain. Otherwise, you've got so much cortisol sloshing around in your system every day that you end up with like, you know, mental health problems, just feeling really anxious. And after many, many months, even years of it, it can end up having quite serious physical health implications. And I don't mean that to scare anyone. I only mean that to make people realize that relaxing properly is a really serious business if you want to avoid major consequences. Now, some stresses we can't really control, but things like, do you get stressed out when you go on your phone and go do some doom scrolling on social media? Now, we do have control over who we follow on social media or whether or not we look at it. So remembering that our devices they're not just portals through which we can be entertained. They're also portals where we might go there for entertainment purposes, but out of the blue, stressful emails arrive, text messages, you know, people ranting about annoying things that are happening in the world. We go there to recharge, but then we come back more stressed because we've been using technology to do that. Just leave the technology behind.
Yeah, I guess it's a perpetual cycle, isn't it? You become absorbed in it. I did want to ask as well, I'll tell you what helped me was classical music. I bought a CD and putting some classical music on, you know, when you're getting ready, really is really soothing. I know everyone's got their own musical tastes, but that's another kind of helpful way to, you know, alleviate stress.
Absolutely. I mean, lots of work has been done to show that classical music, like across many different cultures, many different types of people, it's such a broad area of music, you know, that over, you know, hundreds of years has evolved, that you might not like one type of classical music, but there'll be something out there that suits your taste. There really is something for everyone if you go hunting for it. Yeah. But also for me as a neuroscientist, the key thing is that whatever music you select, so long as it's different to what you normally listen to, then as far as your brain's concerned, it can become synonymous with a different state of mind, you know? So it's not about listening to your favorite tunes, because your favorite tunes remind you of other things that happened in your past. Because the idea here is to spare like all of our stress, all of our worrying things, it either happens in the past or in the future. So if you've got this multi-sensory environment that allows you to center yourself in the present moment, that in and of itself helps to reduce pressure, reduce stress.
That's good. And I know we're talking about on this survey workplace and home life kind of getting intertwined, but these factors do come hand in hand with that as well. And just kind of wrapping up now, do we spend more time do we spend more minutes working overtime at home? And
yes, absolutely, we do. Yeah. And so because of this blurring of the line, we're working 45 minutes a day extra on average. But sorry, I interrupted you. What was the rest of your question?
Oh yes, I was just saying, should we be taking more breaks?
100%, 100%. So there's this creep that happens where we continue to do a little bit of extra work beyond our contracted hours. And we do it because we want to be a good egg. We want to be, a good player, be a good team player. But actually, it's against our best interest. It's about taking regular breaks in the day where you allow yourself to bring those cortisol levels back down, because that makes you a more effective worker when you get back to work, and switching off completely at the end of the day, not allowing yourself to sort of try and clear a bit of work to make the following morning a bit easier. It's really important to switch off completely, because if you're still allowing yourself to get stressed into the evening, then when you try and settle down to go to sleep, you either can't get off to sleep, or you get off to sleep and you wake up with your brain buzzing with work-related stresses. If you take very seriously that process of winding down once you've signed off at the end of the day, and making sure that the way your leisure time isn't too exciting. Some people play video games right up until they go to sleep. Some people watch, exciting, perhaps disturbing dramas right up until the minute they go to sleep. You need to, at the very least, carve out 60 minutes before you put your head on the pillow, where you sort of bore yourself into submission. You do really relaxing things, and you're trying to stop accidentally releasing a squirt of cortisol from your adrenal gland by stressing yourself. Even with pleasurable stresses, you want to make sure that you're completely de-stressing yourself. So then when your head hits the pillow, you can maximize the benefit that you get from a good night's sleep.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Dr. Jack Lewis, on today's interview, discussing why nearly half of Brits say that their house no longer feels like a home, turning into workplace, office, gym, etc. And some very useful tips there on how to get the best out of your work and home life, as well as some good guides to kind of switch off.
Brilliant. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff.